Hello, everyone. We will be looking at research planning and design in human nutrition. My name is Dr. Jumoke Georgina Hilo. By the end of this class, we'll be able to identify nutrition problem. We'll be looking at formulating research questions and hypotheses. We'll be able to review existing literature, develop a conceptual framework. We will be looking at choosing the right study design and lastly, selecting a sample and determining sample size. Identifying a research problem. A research problem is the issue or gap that a study wants to address, and it is the foundation of the entire research process. If there is a gap or issue, then it tells us that there is a need for a research process to kickstart. This problem must be relevant to nutrition, it should be clear and specific, it must be researchable, and it should be one that can solve a real health or nutrition need. Example is a high rate of anemia among adolescent girls. Formulating research questions and hypotheses. Research questions describe what the researcher wants to find out. Of course, when there is a research problem, when there is a need to carry out a research, then there must be some questions waiting for an answer. And these questions are the research questions. They must be clear and focused, directly linked to the research problem, and answerable through data collection. That is, by the time you collect your data, you analyze it, it must be able to answer your questions. Examples are: what are the prevalence and severity level of anemia among adolescent girls, and how do dietary practices and macronutrient intake influence the risk of anemia among adolescent girls? Hypotheses. Hypotheses are predictions about the relationship between variables. Except if you are dealing with descriptive data, then you might not need your hypothesis. But as soon as you are looking at relationship between variables, then there must be some predictions. And these predictions are your hypothesis. There are two types of hypothesis. We have the null hypothesis that explain that there are no relationship existing, and the alternative hypothesis that explain that there are or must be a relationship that exists. Example are: for a null hypothesis, there is no significant association between dietary iron intake and anemia status among adolescent girls, and why the alternative hypothesis is saying that there is a significant association. Literature review and conceptual framework. A literature review is a summary of what other researchers have already discovered about the topic. There is a general saying that there is nothing new under the sun. Of course, some people, some researcher must have done something similar, that will be insightful to bring out the beauty of your own research. And the purpose for it is to help you understand what is known and what is unknown. Because why do we have to carry out or repeat a research that has been done already? And when we know what has been done, we will be able to know what is left undone. It helps you to refine your research questions. Of course, by the time you research on what other people have written, have done via literature review, you will be able to better or refine your own research questions. It shows gaps your study will be filling and guides you the choice of variables and methods. For instance, you can actually repeat the same research that has been done by someone else, but using another methodology or including some other variables. Conceptual framework. Conceptual framework is a diagram or an explanation that shows how variables in your study are expected to relate. You know, it is not definition of terms. Most students make mistake by defining terminologies under conceptual framework. No, it is a section that shows that there is a relationship, whether via a diagram or via an explanation, that there is a relationship among variables in your study. And this acts as a roadmap for the study. Study design in nutrition research. A study design is the plan for how the research will be carried out. Of course, you want to carry it as a research, you must have a plan on how you'll be carrying out this research. And this is what a study design is expected to explain. We have different types. We have the cross-sectional study design, and for that, data are collected at a point in time, just at a point in time. You collect your data, you analyze it, and this data can show prevalence of a condition, but it cannot determine the cause or effect. An example is surveying a school to determine the prevalence of anemia among adolescents. It's just telling you what the percentage prevalence of anemia among students of a particular population, or but it's not telling you what is the cause of anemia or the effect of any intervention. Core study is another example of a study design. And for this, you follow participants over time. It could be retrospectively or prospectively. And it shows how exposure leads to outcome. You know, it's a stronger design to understand the cause and effect of an evidence. You follow participants over time to observe new cases. An example is following a group of adolescents in a school for over 12 months to observe how dietary habit, menstrual pattern, and iron intake can influence the incidence of anemia. We have the case control study, and here you compare people with a condition, which we call cases, and to those without any condition, which we call control. You know, it helps you to look backward to identify possible cause, and then it's very good for rare diseases. Here you have a control which you can be able to identify the possible cause of a variable. Example is comparing feeding practices of stunted versus non-stunted children. We have the randomized control trial, where participants are randomly assigned to intervention or control group. And for this is the strongest design when you are testing the effect of nutrition intervention. You have an intervention group, you have a control group, but they are randomly assigned to this group. They are not, they are put, they are not biased. It's not a design that is biased. Everyone have the right or chance to be selected to either of the group, either the intervention group or the control group, and it is called the gold standard study design. An example is testing whether nutrition education program involve dietary diversity among adolescents. Where you randomly assign people to a group that will be given nutrition education, and you also have another group where people are randomly selected into their group, you know, which is called the control group, where there will be no nutrition education program. Then you compare, look at the effect. You do a pre and post test to look at the effect. The strongest design for testing the effect of nutrition intervention, and it is usually called the gold standard method. We have the qualitative approach. This focuses on understanding attitudes, beliefs, and experiences, you know, and it makes use of interviews, focus group, discussion, and observation. It explains why people behave a certain way. An example is understanding mothers' belief among complementary feeding. Sampling method. Sampling method means selecting parts of the population to participate in the study. Of course, you cannot make use of all the population, especially in Nigeria, where we have more than 200 million people living in the country. And then, if you want to do a study or a research, you need the representation of the population or the segment of the population. And a common method you can use are the simple random sampling, where everyone is given an equal chance. You either choose a yes or a no, and then you are simply randomized into the group. We have the systematic random systematic sampling, where you select every fifth, every sixth, every third, every eighth, every tenth person in a particular population or a subset of a population. We have the stratified sampling, where you divide the population into groups, either by age, whether by class, and and these are called the strata, you know, and then you give everybody an equal chance to be selected depending on the sample size you are looking at. We have the cluster sampling, where you select groups either by community, by schools, and people are, you know, randomly selected into the research group. Here we can also have a mixture of all these methods. You could use a systematic random sampling with a simple random sampling, or you could use a stratified random sampling. Then you mix it up with a system random sampling, and then a simple random sampling. Sample size determination. This is the number of participants that that you should include in a study design, and it should be large enough to produce a reliable result. Lot of things determine the sample size that you use, even though there are different calculations or formulas that has been established that you can use to get your sample size, but it also depends on the study design, population size, the level of accuracy design desired, the expected variation, and lastly the statistical test to be used. Maybe in our future classes we will be looking into a detail to address this the sample size determination and the the calculation, the formulas, and different methods. We have come to the end of this class. Next week, we'll be looking at statistical principles for nutrition research. Bye for now.